So you eventually transitioned to more of like an enterprise AE role at Productboard. Like, how did you think about kind of helping Productboard move up market? Because I have found like some of these bigger companies don't always buy in the PLG way, and they like to be like lead a horse to water or whatever that saying is. Like, so how did you sort of think about kind of that move up market for Productboard?
Yeah, I mean, pretty inelegantly, honestly. I was new to that, and so I think my most direct contribution was through just managing to get in and sell at those larger companies. In some cases successfully, in some cases unsuccessfully. It's worth noting that these companies probably weren't ready to take on like a full deployment with Productboard, at least in most cases at the time. They weren't ready to do these wall-to-wall deployments, but it was about getting into those conversations. And as soon as we started to do that, and when you're making this push up market, you get punched in the nose repeatedly, but you're learning a ton. Like those lessons are like very valuable in getting the type of feedback and understanding of how like the way that they think about best practices in the world of product management might differ, but also just some of the basic brass tacks needs that they have that are table stakes for their for an upmarket or for an enterprise company, that you then have to decide about like what trade-offs make the most sense if you really want to push meaningfully upmarket.
So yeah, it sounds like you didn't quite maybe have product market fit in that enterprise segment when you first started, or at least maybe you had some parts of it, right? Like, how did you think about your relationship with sort of other stakeholders at Productboard, product team, senior leadership team, of kind of getting that feedback back to them so that you can then go be more successful in the enterprise segment? What did that look like?
Yeah, I give, Hubert and the rest of the team a lot of credit because they made themselves like extraordinarily accessible to both the customers that we were trying to connect with, but also to our team who was kind of providing this feedback. So it was very much a sort of ongoing and open dialogue around what we were hearing. And to your point, I think in some cases it felt like, yes, we have it. And it's really just a matter of like, what is the right motion and how do we spend our go-to-market calories really efficiently? And in other cases, we felt like, oh, we need to like release A, B, and C in order to really do this at scale. And so a lot of it did sort of turn into these conversations. And I can remember many where it was like Hubert and my VP of product and I would be talking about this large deal that we were very close to formalizing, but they would have asks and things that they wanted contractually written in there in terms of like the commitments we would make to developing certain functionality that sort of provides the level of like flexibility and administrative rigor that an enterprise company needs. And so I think, establishing that feedback loop was really important. Goes without saying. Thankfully, that was our whole
Good product to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that, it would be silly if we didn't sort of like at least, honor that.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting balance as you move up market. You just don't want to be like a custom dev shop where you're at the mercy of this big company, got to build all this stuff for them. And so it's this interesting game of, okay, we can build some things, but you got to be useful for other people too. And so that's like a really interesting, delicate balance.
Yeah, that's one of I didn't mention this at the time, but I was so keen to join Productboard because that was just a world I wanted to learn more about in terms of how like products get made and like what this actually entails as sort of a philosophy in sort of building a company, which is done by so many great product leaders of the world. And so there was insight in those conversations every time as a seller and an enterprise one felt like we just need to do this, and in some cases, maybe you make that trade-off, but a lot of the time we didn't because there was a, very specific vision and you have to think about more than, just this one customer that's in front of you.
And was the sale for these enterprise companies generally the same of PLG, end user product manager comes in, you capture that momentum and kind of go to the big wigs of the company and be like, look, this is a small example of how you could use Productboard? Or was it more of a top-down sale, you're outbounding to like a CPO or somebody like that? Or was it both? How did the sort of the sale change as you moved up market?
There was elements of both, certainly. I did find myself more having to do bottoms up than anything. And it wasn't ineffective. Thankfully, because it was a strong PLG motion, you would see these pockets of success from product departments within large enterprises. And it might not have been the fastest way or like the shortest distance between 2 points, but I would go in and work with directors and even some cases VPs at large enterprises and just focus on what they were trying to accomplish. And then I'd go to the next one and then the next one. And all the while you're outbounding, you're multi-threading, you're trying to get exec access, you're trying to make trade-offs for the things that you help these sort of champions with in an effort to get access to senior executives. And that's eventually what got us there, was doing that work with them through which we could finally take something of substance and value in the way that we've been proving out value with these other teams to talk about a larger type of partnership.
Would you start multi-threading right away? Like you see an end user come in, do you just start reaching out to everybody else in the company? Or do you really try and like leverage, okay, this end user and get them to introduce you? Like, how did you think about kind of that multi-threading puzzle?
I think early on I did. It was sort of a natural, at least it seemed like a natural next step for me. Like, hey, we're seeing interest. I can, at the very least, what I can do is reach out and say, hey, this is sort of what we're seeing from some members in your company. We don't have a partnership yet, but I'd love to establish that connection as we explore sort of what, a product management platform can do as far as achieving, certain business initiatives, things like that. And in some cases, rare cases, that was effective. What I found more often than not was that we tended to have to do more of the upfront work and then use the relationships that we were building for connections. We had some luck with like the cold multi-thread, but much more success from doing a little bit more of the bottoms up, which I don't know is true of a lot of companies. I think much others would prefer the reverse for obvious reasons.
Yeah. At Doc, we're PLG too, and we have a bunch of end users. But I think what I learned is like, we sell into sales. And so every salesperson's like you talk to is like, I'm going to help you multi-thread, right? They'll say that to you on a call, which is so funny, like game, respect game. But then they get distracted things. And so I think what we have learned is like, we got to just start multi-threading right away. It's like get the end user, start reaching out, start building relationships. And yes, like you should work through your champion, but there's moments where it's like, okay to kind of go around them or to talk to other folks within the organization and kind of show that. So that's, I don't know, a big lesson of ours over the last couple of years.
Yeah. I mean, especially now, I think it was something to be said for the sort of culture of the companies, not culture of the companies, but sort of the nature of the way that they worked in terms of like product orgs and where budget came from and which executives were ultimately the economic buyers. But I completely agree. It sort of looking back, it's unfathomable that we wouldn't have just sort of programmatized more early on, just getting that type of access and sort of doing more just cold outreach to make executive teams aware. And but we didn't do it as often, or at least we were unsuccessful in our efforts to do it.